Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Daisy Lightfoot, and today we have a show you're sure to love. Jack and Rose, Corey and Topanga, Ross and Rachel. These names and the ups and downs associated with their relationships are what helped most millennials form their definition of romantic love. But the generation raised on television sitcoms and Disney movies has also been taught the meaning of love through reality shows, where so-called love is proven with wild antics or a rose. And social media and dating apps have completely changed the quest to find love, for better or worse, depending on who you are. eHarmony, Match.com, and Tinder have millions of members looking for love. But most of America may not have even heard about Equestrian Cupid, Personals, and even gluten-free singles. Name your preference, there's probably a site for it. The online dating industry was worth $350 million in 2009 and has grown steadily by 10% nearly every year since. So whether you believe love comes from fate or from your desktop, what does the perfect relationship look like? Is there such a thing? At Santa Monica Pier, we asked beachgoers to answer, what's love got to do with you?
I have been married to the same guy for almost 20 years now, and I think what has made our relationship last is honesty.
We got to meet at a party, like a lot of people do get to meet at a party.
Yeah, but it was special.
And when I saw you, I said, maybe I should not leave the party right now. I might as well stay.
I don't know really how to say it right. We just kind of had like a connection.
I think it's like something that you shouldn't necessarily just jump the gun with. I think a lot of our generation is so used to like feeling the need to have something there to be a part of everything else.
Kind of get
Just
along.
like communication, good
Communication is key.
helps. So like if we get like frustrated with each other, we just talk about it.
Talk about it,
Good.
and then we have a wrestling match.
Yeah.
right after. Literally, wrestling
Yeah.
match. I usually win.
Sometimes you have to just,
Mutual.
you're different, and he thinks that, and I think this way.
On Point, Serena Sandoval has more on the story.
Thank you, Daisy. Joining me today, I have Bishop Cecil Richardson. I have Erin Tillman, who is also known as the Dating Advice Girl. She's also a dating coach and a radio host. I have psychologist Dr. Andrew Yellen. Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Love can be defined in so many ways. How do you define love? Go ahead and go first.
That's
Bishop.
an excellent question. Now, when I think about love, and that question, I think of a couple of different answers.
Okay.
If I'm dealing within the context of religion and Christianity, I think of agape love, the love of God. If I'm dealing with love regarding humanity as a whole, of filial or brotherly love. And then the love between me and my good-looking wife.
Of course.
Is Eros. And so I think I'll stop right there. What was the question again, Nicole? I apologize.
Just define love, and that was beautiful.
You take that?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you, Erin?
Well, gosh, it's such a big question. And as a dating coach, I deal with more of the early stuff rather than the love long-term stuff. But I would say that in my estimation, love is a deep, energetic connection between two people who are committing to devote themselves to each other and evolve and share together. And that's just off the top of my head.
That's nice. Drew?
I think that love can not have a real good definition because it means so many different things to so many people. I think that it's just a feeling between two people that is indescribable. It's one of those things when somebody says, are you in love? You know it. And when they say, how do you know whether you are or you aren't? It's just, you know it. When you're in love, you know it.
And I know, like, being in a relationship, many people say, oh, I'm looking for love. What is it that they're looking for? How do they know love? Is it growing up, seeing their parents, or is it from television? How do they
I think
know
that
what love is?
The words family and familiar have the same root to it. So you do in a family situation, which a relationship is, what's most familiar to you. So yes, there's a lot that we gather from what we see in relationships, whether that's good or bad, and that tends to imprint pretty much on informing us about what relationships are about.
And if it is a negative type of way, how do they break out of that negative site?
I put them on the couch in the office and we talk about that. There's a lot that happens when people sabotage. People get into relationships and say, why do I keep dating the same person over and over? Why is it an abusive relationship? I say, because you have a neon sign over your head that says, abuse me. And until you come to terms with what that's all about, it's very difficult to break that cycle.
And Bishop, as a pastor, do you have anything to touch on that?
Well, I would somewhat disagree with the doctor as to love in the emotion and kind of love being defined by an emotion. I'm of the opinion that emotions change. They intensify, they weaken, they come and go. So I think that in order to truly come into a love relationship, we have to have other things, other components in play. We have to like each other. Friendships, we have to appreciate our goals, our objectives. We need to define those things which are our negotiables and our non-negotiables. And when we come together with those things, then we're able to literally build a love relationship. We're able to build love and develop love. But to be stuck in the emotion, I try to encourage people not to be stuck in emotion.
Got ya. And Aaron, you said that you touch more of like the early base type thing. When does a person know they're ready for a relationship?
Well, here's the deal. Just wanted to piggyback on those real quick.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of times singles confuse sex with love. In my experience doing workshops and one-on-one coaching, there's intense feelings that happen when people have any sort of intimacy, not just like intercourse, so to speak, but I do caution people because those feelings of love that people feel can be confusing sometimes, based on their histories or just, the connection that they feel, And so I do encourage people to try not to get too intimate too early on, because those feelings can be interpreted as love and maybe, you don't even know that person yet. Can you repeat your question again, though? That was a great
Oh, no, that was good. Actually, yeah. I had something else based on that.
Oh, awesome.
You said not to have that intimacy too early, and I know that sometimes we there's some people that like to wait until marriage to have that like sexual intimacy. How do you defeat that temptation that's there?
For me, I have a lot of thoughts, lots of thoughts and opinions. So let me add something to my past statement before. I don't have any judgment for anyone who wants to engage in sexual activity early, as long as it's safe and consensual. But I just feel like there are a lot of single people who do get intimate early, and then they're not prepared for what could happen after. So, you get involved with someone intimately early on. That person could fall madly in love with you. That person could never call you again. There's so many, STDs can happen. All these things can happen, and so it's important to be aware of those things before. Early on in the dating process, I think it's just important. I think, the bishop touched upon this. It's important to be clear about objectives and know what your negotiables are and non-negotiables are, so that you can match up with people who are on the same page with you in terms of relationships or any sort of dating.
Mm-hmm. Drew, I see you nodding. Do you have anything to add to that?
Our app called Love Shopping List does exactly that. And one of the things that I emphasize with couples and with singles is that although it isn't everything, you need to understand what you're looking for, because that's one of the biggest things that happen. People come in, even with couples, people will come in and there's a disruption in the relationship. And my question to them is, well, what do you want? What are you looking for? And the vast majority of times, I never thought about that.
No idea. Yeah.
I have no idea. So that's what I try and do all the way, all across the board.
When would you say someone is ready for a relationship?
I think that's a very individual kind of question. Mm-hmm. I think that going along with what Bishop said, you have to love yourself at a really deep level, not in a narcissistic way, before you can express love to somebody else, because otherwise you have an empty soul and you go out and you're looking at love as a need rather than a want. And if you don't have a need met, you tend to panic and you tend to do all kinds of behaviors that are not really appropriate or healthy, as opposed to being healthy yourself and then wanting love.
And say someone is ready for that relationship, how do they put themselves out there without getting hurt?
I really don't think that it's somebody, there's a risk when you extend yourself, there's always a risk. You know, the idea of, well, I want to be in a relationship, but I don't want to get hurt. Nobody, unless you're a masochist, nobody really wants to get hurt. But that's a risk when you put yourself out there and you open yourself up, which is why, as Erin said, you've got to do it step by step. You just don't go, okay, I met somebody the first time, here it is, because then it's like you're going to get trampled on.
I think we all have something to say. Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
go for it.
Well, I hear that. Well, let me say this. I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian pastor, so I speak from a Christian perspective. But I have to first acknowledge everybody in America is not a Christian.
Right.
And the values that I hold, they don't necessarily hold. And everyone, it's a human quality to want to be loved. And people are going to come together. And I believe and I teach that God has made intimacy, sex, to bring emotions, to bring that end result, love. And what I mean by that is to intensify the love relationship or the love effect. So people are going to have sex. Now, ideally, from the Christian perspective, sex after marriage. That's what I teach. That's what the Bible teaches. And I'm an ambassador of the kingdom, so that's what I preach. But I understand I encounter 2/3 of the people I encounter engage in premarital sex. And we talked about people getting hurt. They get devastated because they have sex and then emotions come, and oftentimes your emotions overrule your reasoning. And you make poor choices because you're following emotion and you're not following reasoning. A lot of people know the person that they're with, whether male, female, or whatever, they're not good for me. But the emotion is guiding them, is overruling reason, which says, I need to keep looking.
I just want to add something to that. Was awesome. Oh, these guys are great. But I want to add something to that. How do you know that you're ready for a relationship? I think that sometimes, and I'm not going to call out either gender here, but sometimes we're so on a path of the end goal of marriage or a ring or that kind of thing that we overlook the person. I know so many couples who've gotten married and divorced within a year. Because again, they were like, oh, I know this, this year, I'm this age, I'm 30 or whatever, I want to have kids, I'm just going to pick somebody, they seem good enough, I'm going to do it. And so it's really important, you know, before you commit to someone, I encourage singles to date as much as they can. And I don't mean sleep with everyone if that's not their choice. But I just mean date as much as they can to know like what they like and what they don't like. So they're making a conscious choice about who they're choosing to partner with, you know, rather than just dating by default, as I like to say, you know, that there's never a good ending with that. But also, if someone proves to you by consistency and their actions that they're a good partner and they're reliable and they're honest and all of these things, over time, that person would be a great person to be in a relationship with potentially.
Is it possible to have love at first sight, or is it lust at first sight?
Who wants to take this one?
I think it
Dr. Gallen.
depends upon the individual. I will tell you, I've been married 46 years. The first time I laid eyes on my wife, that was it. I was done.
Oh.
That was it. So, you know, is there, from my own personal perspective, can it happen? Sure. Is it a question of lust or love or whatever that is? Has it grown? Does it morph into more than what was originally? Of course, I would hope so after all that time. But I think that if you just see somebody, what's the term I remember in The Godfather? The Italian term for getting struck by lightning. Do I think somebody looks at somebody and then knows immediately? No, you have to have some type of interaction, because you know, as they say, beauty is skin deep. You've got to have some substance that you can judge what a relationship is going to be like.
I have to follow on that.
Go for it.
I'm glad that you gave your personal situation, you know, you and your wife, and you stated love at first sight. And I'm not going to dispute that because you know it better than I do. But what I will say is, if I have a cake, you know, I have the batter and I put it in the pan and it's not in the oven, there is an unbaked cake. But it's not until I put it in the oven and it's cooked can I enjoy the true benefits of it. And I think people can have love at first sight, but it's very premature. It takes that walking, it takes that that time of learning each other before one has mature, functional, and life-lasting love. I don't think we have that when we first meet. And I hope I'm not.
No, I agree with you completely on that. Sociologists tell us that it takes almost 30 years to get to exactly what you're talking about, that it takes that long a time of investment, of energy, and everything else that needs to go into a relationship before it's really, truly a secure relationship. The problem is along the way, and I liken it to, in the old days, what's called a thermocouple. If you have two people who are of different metals, if you will, and they grow to expand at a different rate, that creates a lot of problems.
Correct.
So when you have individuals as a couple who can grow together, you have that energy that continues to grow and both benefit from it. But when one or the other stagnates in terms of their maturity and their love, that's where a lot of times things go very wrong.
Erin,
yeah, of course I have something
since
to say,
you're
of
in
course.
the dating world and
I mean, I deal mostly with the early interactions with people, seeing someone at a bar or online or on a dating app and feeling a certain way about them. I would say it's not necessarily love or lust at first sight, but I would say sometimes there is an energetic, interesting thing that sparks there. And so, like both of you gentlemen said, I think it takes time to make that evolve into love. But I think there's something, I think we could be doing a disservice to just say it's either love or lust, sexy stuff. I think sometimes you can have an energetic, just a weird, unexplainable thing with someone.
Vibe.
Right, and then you just might want to see where that goes later.
Mm-hmm. And speaking on social media, do you think, since, I don't know, our time and age has been so different and people are meeting online, would you recommend any of that?
I think, honestly, there's no one right way or wrong way to meet somebody. Like literally, everyone I know, couples-wise, when I've done workshops, every couple I know has met in a different way. Some have met online, some have met on dating apps. There's one very popular one right now that I'm sure we all know of. Some have met in bars, some have met at church. There's no one way. I feel like, I come from a small town in Ohio. I've been in LA 13 years. But in my small town in Ohio, it's harder to meet people who maybe were as artistic as I was or all these things. So online dating would have been, if it would have been around when I was there, would have been an amazing thing to possibly connect me to people that aren't in my normal social circles. For that reason, I think they're great. There needs to be caution used when using these sites, of course, but you can meet a crazy person in a bar. I know people who have been introduced through friends who have been nuts. So it's a little bit unfair to I know people who are afraid of these things, and I get it. There should be a cautionality there, but it's all about meeting someone online and meeting them in person quickly after to see what their energy is and see if they're really who they say they are, etc. That's my perspective. And listen, online dating and dating apps aren't going away. So it's a very realistic thing that should not be ignored because, people of all ages are using them, not just millennials and such.
Do you agree?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly with all that. A couple of patients, one is 61 and one is 67, and we're still straightening out, they're back on the scene, call it second, in one case third or fourth time around, I don't remember. But yeah, they never figured out what they really wanted.
Yep.
And that presents the problem. And again, it goes back to what you were talking about. There's this empty soul. And so they go out there and they're looking for something. And what I always try and explain is you got to be happy from the inside out. You can't be happy from the outside in.
Mm-hmm. So should love feel like work or should it just come naturally?
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you want to touch on that?
Love is work.
So you bet.
And if you're not willing to work, you're not going to have love.
Mm-hmm.
And I would dare to say that that's the problem with our society. People they say they want love, but they're not willing to put in the work. And you get a hot mess. I've been married just about 20 years to my wife, and I work at it each and every day. I also have the knowledge of from being married previously and not working at it and knowing that it was unable to mature, grow, and last because the effort was not put in on both sides. I'm not faulting my ex-wife. On both sides, we did not work at it. And that matured me, as well as I credit God maturing me. But marriage is work each and every day. And when you cease to work, you cease the desire to have a successful marriage.
There's a great quotation left over from my coaching days. Failure is the only thing that can be achieved without effort. Wow. And that is what happens in a lot of cases. And that goes back to when people grow in different ways, it presents a lot of difficulties. And it isn't just, and I think it's important because we're talking about dating, I think it's important that, we talk about not just male, female, because that's been the majority of everything here. And I know that, that may go against the Christian tenets, but in this day and age, I think we need to look at it, whether it's transgender or LGBT or whatever it is, it's relationship. Yeah. Relationships are the most, the thing that we do the most as human beings is have relationships.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm, again, more of a dating aspect. I would say love is work or relationships are work, but even dating. I know so many couples who, maybe have been dating under a year and, maybe they aren't working at it really and they kind of take each other for granted because, especially in Los Angeles, people are kind of replaceable in certain parts of the city because people move here for a purpose a lot of times. They move here to be in TV or in media or something, or there's some reason they came here, so that's their number one. And then whoever they date or whoever comes in their life is not as much of a priority. That can be a problem sometimes. It's work even at the dating stage for sure.
So you had said that, we do come here, some of us come here to be actresses, and then we move, to some awkward city. Do you think that having that long distance relationship would last?
Oh man, well, I've done one long distance relationship when I lived in Ohio. It was from Ohio to France, because I lived in France for a while. That was hard, but I'm kind of a strange bird, so seeing my boyfriend once a month was actually okay because I was so busy and stuff. And actually, when we saw each other, it was really great. I don't think that I wouldn't encourage someone to have a long distance relationship. I think it's really hard. And I think not that temptation should be a part of it, but it is. People can be tempted, and I think that some people need to physically see or be with their partner more than others, and sometimes that can take away the level of intimacy. But again, like we were saying earlier, I think you said earlier, I think every couple's different, every person's different, so it's important to meet someone, know who you are, like you said before, know who you are, know what you want, and then meet and date people who are on the same page with you. So if someone else is okay not seeing you every day, great. And I'm that person too. Awesome, good pairing. But if that person needs, for them, it's fulfilling to see you all the time, and you can't do that because you're in a long distance relationship, it might not be a good partnership.
I know people say don't find love where you work, but are you saying that maybe that would work?
I actually wrote an article about this not too long ago. I would usually discourage any sort of online, any sort of workplace dating, only because if anything bad happens, HR can be involved, especially there's a lot of situations I know of with bosses and employees, just when there's pay involved, when there's pay and some level of authority or control, so to speak, it can just be a nightmare. So I discourage it. Having said that, I'll use, working in TV and entertainment as an example. A lot of times people are working on sets and stuff for 16, 17 hours a day. So you're going to connect more with people you're on set with. So you will make connections with people. So I know a lot of people who do date in the places that they work in. But in general, not a good idea.
Gotcha.
And that goes to the definition that you had before, that there's a distinction. Sex is part of intimacy. Sex is not intimacy. And that's the difference. So sometimes what happens is when you're on set 6 months away and you're working with somebody 18, 20 hours a day, and then it gets confused and the lines get very blurred.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Bishop?
I don't have a problem with people dating within the workplace environment, whether it's church, whether it's an outside business venture. Dating must be aligned closely with maturity. And I think oftentimes we have people that are involved in the dating quote unquote game and they're immature, they're not ready. One has to acknowledge when you're not ready, anywhere you date, you're gonna make a muckery. It's gonna crash. But you can have a great relationship. I met my wife at church. We worked together. We were part of the ministry team. And she was my friend. I was her friend. And it can be very successful. So I'm a fan of a workplace, but I'm a bigger fan of mature adults.
Gotcha. So one last question before we wrap up here. Does true love exist?
Who's taking this one?
I think Bishop should go first. We'll just go down the line.
Does true love exist? Emphatically, yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you two answers. First, it exists in my home with my wife. And lastly, it exists with God. For
Gotcha.
God is love.
Gotcha.
Man, I gotta follow that. All right, that was really great. I think true love can exist. I think it manifests in different ways, and I think that what we think love is, true love is, based on, I keep going back to entertainment, but based on movies and all these things in the images in the media, I think that what true love could be for each of us is different from what we see it to be. The image that's projected in our society of what true love is, I think that's going to be a little bit different for everybody. So, and I think people get disappointed sometimes because they see that, fairy tale, Disney movie, and they're like, oh, but I don't have that. So does that mean that I don't have true love? No, it doesn't. So
That's not love at all. So, and I think you said that. That's that image. That's not love. And that's why you need maturity. Because what mass media markets or what sells good is not love. And we can't emulate what is not real.
And Dr. Yeller?
I think that, is there such thing as true love? I think it's up to the individual to define what true love is for them, and then to say, have I achieved that in my relationship? And going back real quickly to relationships, when Bishop said mature love, okay, it doesn't have anything to do with chronological age.
absolutely.
I mean, I've got 55-year-olds who are about on a par with a 14-year-old in some cases. So it really depends upon, have you done the work, and that goes back to what we all talked about, have you done the work to get to that point where you really, truly understand and are at peace with yourself first and with your partner.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching On Point. If you'd like to see more, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CSUN On Point, all one word. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. You can watch us on LA 36 at 11:30 a.m., also on Sunday mornings. For all of us here at On Point, thank you for watching. I'm Daisy Lightfoot, and love is all you need.